Hello, everybody. Welcome to CWU Live. We've got another exciting episode for you today. There's a big question mark out there about the union's survival, the union's growth, the union's ongoing validity. How do we keep going? We've got so many members who have done a great shift in our main companies in BT Group and Royal Mail Group, who within the next 3 or 4 years will be taking their retirement and having a really well-earned break. And that obviously is reflected in our representative base. So one thing we've been really, really keen to do is do a show with our young workers. So I'm delighted to have that happening today. I'm equally delighted to have in the studio with me John Carson from our national executive, who is also the branch secretary of Glasgow and District of Mail. Yeah. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Chris.
Joining us online is Holly Gregg. Holly Gregg is a representative of the National Young Workers Committee for the Northern Ireland region, and also on the BT Consumer national team as well. So welcome to you, Holly.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Great to have you both with us. So I'm going to come to you first, if I can, John. We want to have a show today where we're talking, obviously, exclusively about our young workers. But, I mean, people watching, I guess, are going to want to know a little bit about you. So I'm going to ask Holly the same questions shortly, but give a bit about your background, your time in the union and outside.
Yeah, sure. So joined Royal Mail at the end of 2016. I had historically been a member of another union, and then had joined the CWU in 2017. I thought I'd get through my 6-month trial first and see how it went. But anyone else should be encouraged to join on the first day. But slowly started to kind of get involved in the branch and the union in various places. I had a background of being involved in the Labour Party and in politics, and really just ran with it then. I became a local workplace rep in 2017, fighting for better conditions and rights in the local workplace, and then taking part in the union nationally. And then from that, got involved in the young workers section, where I met fantastic people like Scott Hartles, Andy Mercer, Fiona Curtis, Luke Elgar, as well. Lots of people, and that really brought you into the kind of union family. And ever since then, I've kind of gone to in different roles, and now I'm a full-time union official, and I'm able to do this because it's something that I love doing. I'm very privileged to be able to do it full time now.
No, I think people would sort of who are listening would sort of recognise that level of privilege, but also see the work that you're doing and rightly deserve to be in that position. Holly, if I can ask you a little bit the same, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you've got involved with the union.
Yeah, so I joined BT in 2018. Signed up for the union on like my second day, I think, in training. Didn't really know much other than that I needed to be in a union, and didn't have that kind of opportunity to join unions in previous workplaces. They weren't unionized, no recognized trade union. And I was just a union member for a number of years, until industrial action kind of came around. Obviously we have gone years out of pay deal. And when the kind of expression of interest came out to be on the picket lines, I was like, I will be there, absolutely, count me in. And so then, from there, just was really involved on every single picket line, and started speaking to different people within branch, realized kind of it was something I wanted to continue doing and being involved in. So from there, started kind of shadowing, and now I kind of have taken on a few different roles within branch, mostly young worker roles, which has been a great kind of opportunity for me to, I guess, jump in and try out a few different things going on. But yeah, I hold a few different roles now: branch young worker seat on the NT, as you mentioned, Consumer National Team, and on the committee. I love it. I mean, like I said, it wasn't until industrial action that I really knew that there was kind of that place for me there. And once I realized, I was like, yes, I want to keep doing this every day. So yeah.
That's quite some baptism of fire, isn't it? Straight on the picket line. I mean, obviously, think about, we've obviously seen lots of picket lines in Royal Mail over the years, and they're traditionally manned by your senior reps and more experienced people who've been in senior strike. Must have been quite something for you to be chucked in at the deepest end, if you like. Get out there, help us run a picket line and get involved, losing money. You're right in at the deep end there, Holly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that was it, though. It was like having that opportunity to really feel like I was, there was something I cared about, which was my colleagues and I obviously getting a pay rise that we deserved. And I think getting out there and just like feeling like you're doing a part in something that you actually believe in. So yes, although yes, it was quite extreme to kind of jump in like that, but I just loved it.
No, brilliant. It's fantastic. And I think that's going to be like the reason, one of the reasons we've got this session is so we can bring out your guys' story, hopefully to inspire other representatives to get involved. John, we want to talk a little bit about later on in the show about how people can get involved, why they should get involved. But one of the flagship events for the Young Workers Committee is the National Young Workers Education Event. It's been running for many, many years. This year it's in October, sorry. I wondered if you could give us some details on that. And how people can apply, how people can get involved, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. So the Young Workers Education Event is one of our kind of key events in the year to try and give our young workers within our industries a kind of broader understanding of what the union's involved in and what it does. So it's running this year in Cardiff, 27th to 29th of September. Had to check that myself earlier on. And there's a whole host of things there. So some of the issues, for instance, that it's going to be engaging with is about the rise of racism and far-right activities, and obviously the union has a very distinct position on that as part of the labour and trade union movement, and how we have a very central role in trying to combat that and the divisions that can bring. There's also a talk on the history of the miners' strike, the 40th anniversary of the miners' strike this year, and what that means for working people and what it has meant for working people ever since. It's not just an event in history, it's an event, the consequences of which live with us right to today. And one topic as well that's been discussed is why you're skint. And it's a talk about the economy, where power lies in the economy, where the money lies in the economy, and that people aren't skint because of factors that are inevitable or that are beyond their control. It's because of conscious choices that are being made by politicians, by businesses, by the rich and the powerful. And what our role is in that as a trade union, about combating that and overturning that. So quite exciting stuff, I think, fairly relevant stuff, particularly to young people today who are so burdened by public services that are on their knees, a health service that's on its knees, complete inability to get housing. A lot of people putting their entire life plans, family plans, whatever it may be, on hold till after they're 30, and that has consequences for people's material lives. And trade unionism has a very central role in trying to tackle that and trying to challenge those issues. So opening that up for young workers to hear about, get involved in. We've got fantastic speakers. One's Dr. Stevie Nolan from an organisation called Trademark Belfast. I've heard Stevie speak in the past. An absolutely fantastic speaker, really, really, really intelligent, and knows how to communicate really well and get the message across to all people who have got previous experience in some of these issues and people that are new to these issues. And I really would say it's an incredibly worthwhile experience. I've been to several of these events myself, and I would really strongly encourage just our young workers to try and get to it. And the best way to do that, of course, is for them to speak to their branch. Every branch is strongly encouraged to send members. I know I've contacted the young workers in my branch to offer to send people. There's not a lot of people taking the opportunity. I think some people might think it's too good to believe that their union branch is sending them to all expenses paid to Cardiff for a weekend. I'm not going to comment on whether people want to go to Cardiff or not, but the offer is certainly there. I've not been, so I would love to experience it. So I mean, the opportunity is there. It's not too good to believe. It's a very real opportunity with lots of interest and stuff, and you'll meet great people. Some of the best people that I've met in my life, I've met at CWU events and trade union events, and those are opportunities right there for our members, and I would encourage them to take it up.
You've showed it very well there, John. And I'm going to come back to yourself and Holly, shortly to talk about what branches can do to really encourage people to get there, and why people maybe who are a little bit nervous about going should take that plunge. I want to come to Holly first, and I'm sure you're going to want to say something on the back of this. Obviously, members, representatives will be aware of the tragic loss of Andy Kerr, our Deputy General Secretary, TNFS previous, who was an extraordinary individual and a great man and a great trade union leader. Holly, Andy, amongst all his other contributions to the union, was a huge advocate for young workers and young representatives, and attended the education event every single year. I thought you might want to say a few words on that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's huge. I mean, and does not go unnoticed. I would say the effort that is taken to turn up at those events every year. I mean, and the effort that Andy made. I think that a lot of, especially young workers events, people don't always get to see the people at the top, I suppose you could call it, but Andy always took that time, and that meant a lot, I would say, to a lot of young people to kind of see that, while they're actually taking the time, they're here, they're willing to maybe get up and say something or be there for a chat. And Andy was very good for that in general. I didn't work directly with him myself much, but he even took the time for it. Going back to what we were talking about the picket lines, I remember again, that was my kind of some of my first experiences, and he took the time to come to Belfast and speak to us in the picket line. So that was Andy through and through, I would say. So yeah, definitely very, very appreciated over the years, the effort that was made there, and a great man.
Thank you. I love your trip. I'm sure you, John, obviously you knew Andy well from National Executive and fellow Scott. Any sort of thoughts, reflections yourself?
Yeah, I mean, Andy's loss is just so widespread throughout the union. I think everybody felt it. Just because, just as a human being, he was a fantastic person, incredible sense of humour, so accessible, as Holly mentioned. Andy would talk to, no matter who you were, where you came from, he would talk to you, and reflecting our union, historically, of course, there was the telecommunication side of the union, and then obviously the postal side of the union, and some people sometimes still see themselves in two camps, but Andy broke through those camps. He broke through all divisions, because at the end of the day we were all united by a central cause, which was better conditions and a better livelihood for working people, the length and breadth of the UK. And of course Andy had a special place in terms of my own branch, because Andy's son Matt was a member of our branch, and is still a member of our branch. He was a postal worker in Govan. He also sits with me on Glasgow City Council as a councillor, and Matt is an absolute testimony to his father, and the struggles that Matt's engaged in fighting against the grain in a lot of times for a better life for people across the UK, and as and not for very, very little. No one does it for reward. Certainly, no very little reward, and in cases, little thanks from some establishments. But Andy never gave up his fight. Matt never gives up his fight either, and I think that is testimony to Matt's character, of course, but absolutely to Andy and everything Andy gave to this movement, his own family, and to all his friends.
Thank you, both of you. Lovely words, and we'll wish you very, very much, Andy, and all of our love to Andrea, Matt, and Mandy as well. I want to move on. I want to come back to you, Holly, if I can, sticking on the education event just for a moment. I mean, you described at the start of the show your journey into the union, and your sort of baptism of fire on the picket line, if you like. There'll be loads and loads of workers all over the country who maybe listening to this but thinking, I don't know, it's a commitment. I don't know anybody. Do I know enough about the union to go there? What would you say to people who are just not sure whether they should be at that education event? Would you really encourage them to go? What would your message be to them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely would encourage, if you're kind of on the fence, this is probably a really good event for you, to be honest with you, to come along to, because again, it's about educating young people. So even if you aren't really sure about whether you see a future long term in the union, stepping into a role there necessarily, there's loads that you can take from this event anyway. But similarly as well, if you're kind of thinking, maybe, this would be something I'd like to go into, I feel strongly about workers' rights, or, people's rights in general, and fighting for that, or whether it be some people are interested in the kind of more equality strands, LGBT plus, disability strands. Again, all of that, like, you will meet people who do bits and pieces of all of that. And probably more actually than even some of the stuff you realize the union do. So I think if this is kind of stood out to you in any way, or if you're watching this podcast, to be honest with you, you should probably be registering, speaking to your branch about going. Like John said as well, it's a great place to meet loads of different people within the trade union movement, from different workplaces, like the Utah guys, for example. There's like loads of different workplaces there, tech startups and things that are covered. People I've met with just such different experiences to the world that I kind of come from. So I would definitely encourage anybody thinking about coming, speak to your branch, get registered, come along, see what it's about. And again, even if you decide not to step in or go for any roles, there's so much you can take from these talks anyway in your personal life. So definitely would recommend anybody to come along.
Thanks, Holly. Flip aside from the rep to the branch. John, you can put your branch secretary hat on. Now you can swap over. There will be some branches out there funds are tight. They're busy. They're under pressure. We're representing members every single day who wouldn't have at this point got to the point of really getting out there, really encouraging young workers in their branch to attend this event. What would your messages to our branches out there be? Because we're ultimately going to need to very rapidly, i.e. yesterday, find the next generation of representatives in our trade union. How are they going to go about it, and what could they do in the coming weeks to get people to Cardiff?
Yeah, I mean, with my branch secretary hat on, look, it is a very difficult task for a lot of branch secretaries. Not all of them have full release. Some are on partial release and have limited facilities, and they just do what they can. And it's a massive job, because you have to cover a whole range of things within whatever branch it is. And so you always have to try and work your list, your priority list, and all the rest of it. But why this is such a big priority, and not just for obviously branch secretaries, for our union members who are over 30, sadly, who are watching this live event or listening to it, opportunity for them to speak to the under 30s as well, because it is absolutely critical for our movement, for our union in particular, but for our movement totally, to try and get as many young workers involved as possible. Because, I mean, over half, the TUC figures anyway, over half of union officials are over 50. And we only have to, correlate between the age demographic of trade unions and the rights and the terms and conditions that younger workers in the private sector, I think over 80% of whom are in the private sector, their terms and conditions, how they are lower on average and all the rest of it, and that sense of powerlessness that they have, that if our institutions do not respond to bringing in young workers into our branches or whatever, then we will not survive. Yeah. And if we do not survive, as people's children and their grandchildren that will ultimately suffer, because we know what it looks like in industries where there aren't trade union organisation and representation, because we've been there in history. You only have to look at, if you look at historical industries, the automotive industry, the mining industry and all the rest of it, they didn't give rights to people and health and safety to people. Children didn't stop working in these brutal industries just because people discovered a heart. Where wealth and power is involved, people will ride it out as far as they can. And it was only because of the organised power of working people that a stop was put to that, exercising ourselves industrially and politically. But that has been missed, I think, by a younger generation, because I think the old certainties of the past have changed. I mean, I was born in 1994, grew up in the kind of the new Labour years, where it was taken for granted that things would only get better, that life was all about improvements. It's like my grandparents were immigrants from Ireland, came from rural backgrounds and kind of poorer backgrounds. Parents then worked their way up from that, and then the expectation is the next generation goes even higher as such, or is more kind of successful, depending how you define success, right enough. But that's all stopped. Those certainties of the past are not there anymore, and people need to relearn that it's about the power that we build for ourselves is all that we can control, and is all that we can really improve and make better, and that things are not going to be done for us. Things have to be done by us, and it's going to take time, it's going to take effort, and we can't make any assumptions anymore. So that's a lesson I think that we need to express to a younger generation, an older generation as well, I think, has to try and understand it. But it can be frustrating to try and build those bridges. It'll take time and effort, and it'll take a lot of repetition. So I think we have to be prepared for that, but it's absolutely essential. And it's life or death is very strong, but in terms of our movement, it is a life or death question for the terms and conditions and the better life for our children, grandchildren, my children, grandchildren, whenever they come along. That is what's on the table here. So it's absolutely critical that we get people involved.
Good call to arms there from John to all of our branches. Please do everything you can in the coming couple of weeks to make sure people are in Cardiff at the end of the month. Holly, I want to come back to you because it's not all happening just nationally. I've a great job that all of you guys are doing. There are many regional events going on where young workers can get involved. I know you wanted to touch on some of that in this show.
Yeah, definitely. So for example, with us in Northern Ireland, we've set up a regional forum, and the forums, by the way, actually can be in any kind of, as long as it's related to a workplace or in trade union issue, it can be around anything and kind of look like whatever the region wants it to. So that's been pretty exciting for our young people to kind of have that free rein and go and work with organisers to set that up. and kind of have a bit of autonomy there. But yeah, locally in Northern Ireland, for example, me and one of the other girls from our branch, our women's officer, Brona, another young worker, have been working together to kind of put together a young workers event. This will be kind of an opportunity for us to launch a young workers regional forum, which we haven't really had. And so we're doing a takeover of a local bar, and we are having day sessions with some speakers, and then a social event in the evening with comedians and cider tasting. So that's kind of what we went for locally, because that's going to be, we know, probably more likely to be a hit with young people locally, to get them in the door and get them coming along to something that's maybe actually fun for young people. That's the goal. But yeah, across the board though, we've been organising lots of different. So each region, as I said, has organised their own event. In the Midlands, there's a seminar for young workers on like mental health, which is a full day thing for them, which is really exciting. Again, it can be about anything. So that's what they've chosen is the thing they want to speak about. We have in the Southwest as well, they're running a half a day conference. They're doing something sort of similar to like a mini education event, but locally there with some speakers from TNFS and Postal. And then, yeah, we've got some other guys in the Southeast. They're doing a seminar on mental health as well. And they're going to have like Fiona Curtis, acting national officer for Openreach, coming along. Look, Elgar from Postal, Jim McGovern. And yeah, some of the other ones have been the Northwest, London region, Wales region, have all organised their own kind of versions. But yeah, so it's been pretty successful across the board for the regional events. And I think if you hear about any of these, or if you've heard any of your regions mentioned here today and don't know about the events, definitely speak to your branch or local reps, because it'll be a good place as well for just people locally, maybe members who don't want to get as involved as to come to a national event, but they're happy to call down to a local bar, come for a wee seminar, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's some of the work that's been going on. And then lastly, then there's Utah. Obviously, they're a national branch, so they don't have necessarily local events for their members, but Utah have been really, really good at supporting us to let their members know about the regional events that are going on if they want to get down and meet some of the members, although it's a different region because Utah is separate, but you know, linking in with local reps, local members, and then they'll be running a wee event on the Friday night in Cardiff as well to assist there. There's a wee organising campaign going on for an unrecognised workplace in Monzo, so to get non-members as well down. So that's happening in Cardiff as well, just for anybody in the area. So yeah.
There's a lot going on, Holly. Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Great rundown. Thanks for that. John, I want to get into the events are there. We've got loads of good stuff going on, which is fantastic. I want to get into sort of wider topics now. Two-part question, one part for you, one part for Holly. I want you to concentrate with me for a second on just joining the union, young people joining the union. If you think in Royal Mail, for example, there's loads of new people joining the company who are on lesser terms and conditions. You know, we've got call centre workers across both constituencies joining and who are saying to us, you know, that money for joining the union is the difference between paying for a bill or not paying for a bill. And right across society, as you touched on, union membership in young workers has dropped, you know, significantly. You know, why is it so important in your view that young workers get into the union? So before we talk, I want to talk to Holly and yourself about activism, but first of all, sign up to be a union member.
I mean, ultimately, it's our strength is in numbers. Our strength is in solidarity and coming together. At the end of the day, when you live in a society where, and people will know this from their own lives and experience, when it comes to private renting, you know, where they're getting dictated to by landlords, the reason that landlord is able to dictate to you is because the laws in the country, because he has money, because he has capital, because he has property, and he's allowed to set the boundaries of your existence, the boundaries of your life. And the reason that they're allowed to do that is because that's how our system is set up. What we have in the workplace, the key thing we have in the workplace is numbers. It's our strength in numbers. So that's why it takes every single person to sign that over, to join the union, to sign up. But that's just an initial step. That's where our power comes from. That is where that leverage comes, where we can say to the employer that this is simply not good enough. And the reality is, it is unfortunate that this is the generation that has suffered this attack in terms of Royal Mail. This is the generation that has been targeted. But the only reason that the terms and conditions that the other employees are on, the only reason they are on those is because it was another generation in the past that was similarly targeted and had to build itself up. So the only hope, the employer took it away and they're not giving it back. We're going to have to make them give it back. And the only hope, the only advocate, the only strength that we have is each other, and that is that, and the force for that is our union, and that is it. And union membership, I know it's now paid monthly, but you're talking, less than maybe at the price of beer these days. You're maybe talking maybe 2 pints a month. Is maybe a pint and a half a month is what your union subscription is. It's a
maybe
small,
not even a pint, Satty, where you're in London at the minute.
yeah, indeed. But or a pint in some places, or a cocktail in there. Definitely a cocktail in some places, cheaper than one cocktail a month. But that's it. When you look at the dividends that can pay in terms of the help and support you can get, as Holly had mentioned, whether it's it can be mental health support, it can be health and safety advice, it can be support in the workplace in terms of negotiating with employers, with managers, and all the rest of it. Getting free legal advice that's provided as well. It can help you in so many different ways. Yeah. And it's a very limited subscription for the benefits that you get for it, and the longer you're there, the dividends it will pay.
Thanks, John. Well, Holly, John's got them into the union for you. Your job now is to get them active. What would your message be to young workers who are really sort of thinking about taking that leap from being a member of the union to being a representative, an activist, an advocate, or just doing a little bit more?
Yeah, I think if it's something that you're considering in any way, have a chat, even if it's just to your local reps, to see a little bit more about, because I know not all members understand the union structures. In fact, actually, a lot of reps, me myself included, sometimes don't understand the union structures. So you don't have to know exactly what you're looking for or what you want to do, and the reps can help you understand kind of what rules there are, what options there are to get involved. And I said to some local members that we had a meeting with recently, like being involved in the union can look like a whole load of different things. Some people just want to be kind of our like people in the workplace that come and feed information through, and that's all they want. That is as necessary as every other role. Some people want to get involved. Some people want to be involved in health and safety. And not do casework. Some people really want to do casework and help people in the workplace. There's just so much that the union does, and so many roles that there are within the union. And I would say probably, if you're thinking about it, just have a chat with the local reps and see what's out there. Because I know myself, I was sitting there as a member paying dues for years and didn't know. I knew that you would go to the union if you were like in trouble. So if I was, put in for a meeting or something. But other than that, I didn't know really what the union did. I know that there was probably negotiations and pay stuff, but other than that, what is there, But in the last kind of couple of years since industrial action that I've been involved, it's like the learning curve for me to see all the stuff that we do has been huge. And to find out that it's almost frustrating looking back. Like I would have loved to have been involved for years and doing things for years in the union, but I just didn't know that was my place, for my passions. But there are so many things. If you're passionate about it, there's probably a place for you somewhere, So yeah, I would definitely recommend even having a chat with your local reps. If you don't know your reps, that's totally fine. Sometimes you don't know them or don't know how to approach them. All the branches have contact details on their website and stuff. So even popping an email to your local branch to say, hello, what's going on? What can I do? How can I get involved? And some of the stuff we do as well is not even directly in the workplace. It's like rallies and events and things like that, going along to Pride, running different events. Like our branch, for example, there was some terrible riots and things here in Northern Ireland recently, and I know across the UK. But a huge part of that counter protest movement against those kind of racist riots were the trade union movement. All the unions were there. ICTU was down, which is Irish Congress Trade Unions, but also our local trade unions. So there's so much that we do and you can be a part of, even if you just want to do that activism part as a member. There's just so much that you can do. So yeah, have a chat, find out where you fit in.
That's fantastic, Holly. Just to hear you talk about, and John as well, the importance of campaigning in the workplace, but also that the union, is out there on anti-racism rallies, is fighting on issue-based campaigning like housing, is brilliant, and I'm sure will interest lots and lots of our members. One more question for you, John, and I want to give you both a chance to sum up. A bit of an open question, if you like, but you've got the floor, if you like. The members listening, the leadership of the union, hopefully listening. What more do you think the union, and I guess when I say the union, I'm talking this headquarters, Dave, the industrial leaders, Tony, and everyone else, can and should be doing for young workers? Have you had like a shopping list? You were telling me earlier you're in the final throes of being a young man, and you're going to be old soon. So, what was your parting set of requests be?
That's the bit where I throw the grenade and walk out the door, isn't it?
Your mic drop, isn't it?
Do you know? To be fair, now it's. Obviously, like Dave and the leadership and Tony and that are in a difficult position because they're based at headquarters. They're full-time officers. They've got a big job to do, and they cover so many angles, political angles, industrial angles, and there's a lot to be getting on with. Now, but I suppose if we go back to Andy Kerr. Andy was exceptional in terms of his accessibility, being at young workers events, speaking to young workers. Like I say, it doesn't matter who you were, what background you were from, no matter what, sitting would have a good social conversation with you, and it wouldn't have to be about necessarily work. It could be, could be football, it could be anything. It could just be pure observations made of the day, and that connection with somebody that at a distance looks very high in a hill type thing. But when you get very close to them, it's very personable. You can sense from the commitment, the purpose, and I think the problem for leadership is when it's cutting the day to day, you can start to lose the passion, because you're not just focusing on issues and being driven by those. Sometimes you have to deal with a lot of the kind of day to day paperwork stuff and all the rest of it. And it's that personal experience gives people the exposure to those passions that you can see got that person to where they are. But since I've been on the national executive, and even before at different events, when we were doing a number of ballots, and the kind of from 2017 up until COVID anyway, would have met Dave, spoke to Dave, would have met Tony, spoke to Tony, and had those same experiences. And of course the same with Terry Pullinger when he was kicking about as well, and had those kind of similar experiences. So they have been very good in encouraging young workers so far. But there's always a job to do, because every new year brings a new coterie of people in where they'll need that encouragement, they'll need that exposure. And fellow branch secretaries probably hate me for this one, but the STUC highlighted an issue where in trade unions in Scotland there was a serious issue with the gender disparities, and that there were a lot of very keen female activists, women activists, who were not being able to break through into the trade union structures, which were historically very male, and there's a lot of social barriers there that the movement has to overcome. So they had a campaign called Step Aside, Brother, to encourage people to look at the legacies they were leaving, the succession planning, and to make to assess what they've done, and to think, how do we bring people forward to bring in the new leadership of the union. And I think that is something that our union branches need to seriously consider as well when it comes to young workers, and of course workers of all different backgrounds as well, so that we are more representative of our workplaces. But also just that the system needs to refresh itself every so often, and I think that is something that has to be worked on. And it's self-evident when you look at the demographics of unions up and down the country, and our own union in that. And to be fair, now I've met a lot of very experienced union reps, a rep in my own branch, for example, who was thinking of going for a senior union position, and basically says, I don't want to do it because I think it's time for the next generation. And made that clear decision, saw that they had a long service with the employer, with the union, and thought, you know what, it's time to give someone else the go of it, and to see if they can shake things up. And I think that was incredibly selfless decision, and an incredibly powerful decision. And I think that is a decision that has to be made and considered a lot more deeply in a lot of parts of our union and across the movement.
Thank you, John. Brilliant, mate. So we get to the end of the show. Going to give you, as in a time-honored fashion, just 30 seconds each at the end or so, just to get your final messages across. If I can come and start with you first, Holly, if that's okay.
Yeah, my final message would just be for any young people out there to reach out to their branches, reach out to their local reps, see what they can do. If you've got ideas, even if people say, well, that's not really how it works, or that's not usually how we do it, just keep shouting your ideas and shouting about it until you change it. And if you're not happy with something the union does, if you're thinking, I don't really want to get involved with that branch because X, Y, Z, it's democratically run. It is your place to come in and change it, and feel free to. And there's a place for everybody in the trade union movement. So get out there and scream and shout about whatever you care about.
Thank you, Holly. Fantastic. John, your last 30-second message, my friend.
Just get stuck in. Just take every opportunity that comes. That's certainly what I ended up doing. It's allowed me to, explore what is it I really want to do in life. What am I really committed to? What are my passions? That's what the trade union movement gives you, is being able to work and serve other people. I think it's incredibly important, very, very fulfilling. And as kind of Holly said, no part is too big or too small. No one's too young or too old. Everyone has their part to play, because we are a collective movement. And without everyone doing their bit, we're not going to get anywhere. So like I say, it doesn't matter what it is, even if it's just helping your rep out, being a rep, being a national executive member, or just standing on a picket line. It doesn't matter what you do, turning up to union events to have a pint and talk to folk, whatever it is, taking part, helping the organisation to grow, to develop, to exist. Bringing it all together is what makes us stronger and can make a difference. And for young workers, that's how I think we're going to make a difference here too.
Thank you, John. Well, thank you to Holly. Thank you to John. I think you've both been fantastic guests, and you've given a brilliant contribution there. Reminders from the session: if you're a young worker and you're watching, get in the union, get active. Please consider signing up for the Young Workers Education event in Cardiff later in the month. It's going to be a brilliant event. Holly's talked about loads and loads of regional stuff as well, so make sure you get yourself along to that. From all three of us, thank you for watching. We've really enjoyed your company. Perhaps the final message will be to those of us who aren't under 30. Please do your bit as well to bring through the next generation of CWU members and CWU representatives, because we've all got a role to play in this. But from all of us, that's it for today. Thank you all, and keep the faith.